You just never know who's going to turn out to be a Callidus assassin. You think you're safe among friends, then all of a sudden you're cut to ribbons with a katana phased sword. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy and tactics focused 40k channel, where we're all about making the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today we'll be continuing in another installment in our Assassins series. We've talked about the Vindicare and Callidus over the last couple of weeks, and today it's time to shine the spotlight on the Callidus. In this video we'll take a look at her datasheet and special rules, her stratagems, and how I would use one in a game of 40k. In the background, the Callidus Temple specialises in deception and shape-shifting, allowing a Callidus assassin to assume the identity of one of her target's retinue and walk unchallenged among enemy ranks until the time is right to deliver the killing blow. With the combination of polymorphine and surgical implants, Callidus assassins have even been known to masquerade as alien species, from Tau and Eldar to Genestealer cultists and even orcs. Once revealed, the Callidus can unleash the fearsome weapons of her temple upon the foe, the katana phase sword that cuts through any and all armour that is thought to be made through relics of Necron technology, and the neural shredder, which does not target the body but instead fries the target's mind. So a fearsome set of abilities. How do they shape up on the field of battle? So, as always, a Callidus Assassin is a Codex Assassin's Elite's choice and will cost you 95 points as of the new chapter approved 2019. She can either be fielded as part of the Operative Requisition Sanction stratagem, for 2 command points to add an assassin of your choice to your army, or as part of their Execution Force Vanguard, which doesn't have an HQ, requiring you to field at least 3 assassins, but you only get the bonus command point if you field one of each. For that 95 points, you get a fairly typical assassin stat line: 7-inch movement, weapon skill and ballistic skill 2 up, strength and toughness 4, 5 wounds, 5 attacks, leadership 9 and a 6 up save, though of course she has lightning fast reflexes to give her a 4+ invul save. She is armed with a neural shredder, a phase sword, and poison blades, which we'll go through in just a second. But first let's talk about her signature ability, her polymorphine. She can use this to be set up in disguise at the start of the first battle rounds rather than on the table, and seeing as this is such a powerful ability, I would usually do this. She comes on from reserve in the normal way, so that'll be at the end of the movement phase in either turn 2 or turn 3 in match play games, but she can come on significantly closer than most deep strikers can, due to her infiltrating abilities. You can set her up anywhere on the battlefield that's greater than d6 plus 3 inches away from the enemy. So ideally you want to roll low for this. If you roll a 1, then she can set up within 4 inches of the enemy army, but if you roll a 6, then she'll have to set up 9 inches away. This can be a good dice to command reroll if you do roll very high, as being able to pretty much guarantee a charge, or maybe reach targets to charge that she wouldn't have normally been able to. It's a really powerful ability indeed. Once she has revealed herself, she can bring her weapons to bear. Firstly, her neural shredder is a 9-inch range assault 1 weapon. It'll hit on the 2 up with her normal ballistic skill, and if it does, then you roll 3d6. If this 3d6 roll is higher than the target's highest leadership, then it takes d3 mortal wounds. You're quite likely to beat your target's highest leadership with 3d6. If you target the typical targets which have around leadership 8 or 9, then you'll have something along the lines of a 60 to 70% chance of getting this mortal wound ability off. So a very good way to stack some mortal wounds on her prey before she charges. When she's in combat, she has 2 combat weapon options, the phase sword and the poison blades, because the phase sword eclipses the poison blades in every way. You should always strike with this as your primary weapon, but she gets to make 1 additional attack with the poison blades even if she uses her phase sword. So in combat she'll be making 5 attacks with the phase sword and 1 attack with the poison blades. The phase sword is strength user, AP -3, damage 2, and invulnerable saves cannot be taken against attacks made by this weapon. Now this is a really solid all-round profile. Decent AP, ignoring invul saves and flat damage 2, means that it's pretty strong at carving through elite infantry, but particularly on characters, and even more so on characters that aren't that tough but have a high invul save to keep them safe. There are quite a lot of examples of this. Probably the most common would be the standard issue Space Marine Smash Captain with a Storm Shield, where an average roll in close combat will typically see her causing 4 wounds on the Smash Captain. She's also particularly handy against killing Eldar as well, as their characters tend to be toughness 3 with high invul saves, such as Dark Eldar Archons with their shadow fields, or Eldar Psykers with their runic armour. As a little interesting side note, she's not really too bad against killing assassins because of ignoring the invul saves as well, so she's not a bad counter-assassin choice if you want that. The Poison Blade attack always wounds on a 3-up if you're targeting a non-vehicle, and wounds on a 6-up if you're targeting a vehicle and has 1 AP. It's really not much, but it is 1 extra swing, and it certainly gives you 1 last chance to kill a character if they just have 1 wound remaining. So certainly a nice to have. She has another couple of unique special rules. Firstly, hit and run will allow her to fall back and still shoot and charge in the next turn, making her a very flexible close combat opponent, meaning that your opponent can't just lock her up by throwing a tough vehicle or something in for her to chew on. He'd actually have to surround her with infantry models if you don't want her going after other targets next turn. Finally, she has a very powerful command point ability. Reign of Confusion can really throw a spanner in the works for your opponent's stratagems. During the first battle round, even if she isn't deployed on the table, she just has to be in your army, then every time your opponent spends a stratagem on a 4+, they must spend an additional command point if they want to have that stratagem's effects go off. If they don't want to, or if they somehow manage to be out of command points in turn 1, then the previous command points that they've spent on that stratagem are just wasted. Now this is going to be most beneficial whenever your opponent is planning on using multiple stratagems turn 1, particularly if they're things that their army absolutely needs to function, then this ability is really quite likely to drain your opponent's pool of command points, so they'll have less powerful abilities to play with later in the game. It might also make opponents want to hold off on using their stratagems till turn 2, which is actually also a really powerful effect, because the earlier you can deploy powerful abilities into the fight, the more effect they're going to have on your opponent's army, because if you can, say, remove more models earlier in the game, then they won't be fighting all game long. If your opponent's going to have to wait to use their cool abilities till later turns, it's actually really quite a significant blow to them, so quite a handy little ability all in all. Other than that, she also has Independent Operative, meaning that she can't be given a Warlord trait, Lightning Reflexes for the 4-up invul save, and Execution Force, the rule for how you take her in Vanguard detachments, as we've already mentioned. So overall, the Callidus Assassin is likely going to be an assassin who will pop up very close to your opponent's army, hopefully neural shred and put that phase sword to work on a crucial character, hopefully killing them in 1 round of combat. And her command point ability is kind of completely separate to the rest of her ability, and you can see it more as a bonus effect that will give your opponent a bit of a headache turn 1, or just drain their command points a bit. So let's take a look at her stratagems. As always, assassins have the priority threat neutralize stratagem, the one where they can pay 1 command point to gain 2 command points when they kill a character, or 3 command points if they kill a warlord. So that's certainly one to remember when she puts her Catan phase sword through a Space Marine's head. She also has 2 unique stratagems of her own, the first being Acrobatic. For 1 command point, this will allow you to advance and charge this turn, and in addition, until the start of the next battle round, subtract 1 from hit rolls from attacks targeting the chosen model. Advance and charge could be handy if it's going to make the difference between her closing in and killing her second target, because presumably you'll be using the polymorphine to get close to the first one, then it could well be worth it. The -1 to hit will certainly help keep her safe a bit, or at least drain a little bit more of your opponent's firepower to try and remove her from the game. It is worth noting that this only applies until the start of the next battle round though, which is a little bit unfortunate in its wording, because it means if you go second, then your opponent's army will still be able to shoot her as per normal, because that will be the start of a next battle round. However, if you're going first, this will also apply during your opponent's turn. So I think that this was pretty bad wording on the stratagem from Games Workshop's part, to be honest, because it functions quite differently if you're going first or going second. So consider it a lot more if you're going first. Her other unique option is Supreme Deception. This is 2 command points to extend her Reign of Confusion ability to another battle round. I would typically only really think about using this in the second battle round, because most of the time if your opponent's playing smart, they'll be aiming to use a lot of their command points by the first and second battle rounds to get the most advantage out of them, and gain bigger swings earlier in the game. Now this does cost 2 command points, so it's not cheap, so unless your opponent's planning on using 4 stratagems or more, it's typically going to cost you more command points than your opponent on average. I'd say the rough rule of thumb for using this is, firstly, I think your opponent's army needs to be quite reliant on using certain stratagems on the turn that you want to use it, and also you need to be pretty certain that those stratagems that they're going to use will make better use of their CP than you could get for using your 2 command points somewhere else. A good example would be if you'd use this Callidus assassin as part of a guard army, and your guard army had something ridiculous like 20 odd command points, and you were playing against a slightly command point starved Genestealer cult army, where Genestealer cults can get absolutely massive value out of their stratagems from their various deployments shenanigans and other powerful abilities in the fight phase. In this scenario, you wouldn't care too much about losing 2 out of your big pool of 20, but you could really turn up the heat on your opponent, as they now might not have enough command points to make use of all the stratagems that they'd planned to. So I'd say that this one is situational. I would not use it every single game, but in the right scenario can certainly be a big asset to your army. So how would I use a Callidus assassin in game? Firstly, if you're using the stratagem to buy assassins in, I'd most consider this girl in one of 2 situations. Firstly, an enemy army that's incredibly reliant on high value stratagems to get a lot of their value, and secondly, to specifically target certain fighty characters with good invul saves like Smash Captains or maybe other assassins. Between her Neural Shredder, Catan Phase Sword and really good deployment abilities, she'll have as good a chance as any of killing that important character in one turn, so she can be a really good counter to these. And of course it's doubly great if your opponent both has these sort of characters and is reliant on stratagems. Blood Angels in particular come to mind, with their great close combat stratagems and also Smash Captains. I would pretty much always start her in reserve, unless you're absolutely certain that the enemy army is going to be so well screened that you're never going to get close to any choice targets even with her polymorphine ability. Say if you're playing an absolute horde of orcs. Even if you are though, then sometimes it can be good just to have her as a threat that can come down, potentially very close to the enemy army indeed, meaning that if they actually want to screen her out, they're going to have to redeploy a lot of units to make sure they're covering the vast majority of the board. It's really not all that easy to screen out every single pocket that could be a potential deployment spot for the Callidus, as that could be as little as 4 inches from enemy models. When she drops in, I'd be primarily trying to use her as a character assassin, cut through those very choice targets that we've talked about already, or failing this, she could use her very good deployment options to maybe try and charge down a gunline unit and tie it up to stop it shooting next turn. When you do make the charge, I'd try and use what positioning you can to see if you can get her in cover or out of line of sight after she's finished the charge, or potentially after she's offed her target. After this, she will be at the mercy of enemy reprisals, and there is a very real chance that she is just going to get shot down after this. She's not as tough as some of the other assassins, and is going to want to put herself in harm's way to try and get to her target. So in all honesty, I wouldn't count on her surviving till the next turn, though you could make it a bit more likely if you have multiple important threats coming in. If she does, I'd certainly consider making use of that acrobatic stratagem to maybe reach a target that she wouldn't have been able to. Or if she's still in combat, she could potentially fall back, shoot something with a Neural Shredder, and then charge what target she chooses. Basically anything after the first initial strike is kind of added value. And don't forget about the potential to extend her Reign of Confusion ability, but I wouldn't do this every game, as you run the chance of just depleting your command points more than you do your opponent's. So that's my review of the Callidus. I think that she certainly does her job better than a lot of other similar characters in 40k. Being able to get so close, she can genuinely often make good charges on her character targets, and with damage 2 and ignoring invul saves, she really does have the tools to actually get a good chance of a kill. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if your Callidus assassin has achieved anything cool before. I had one particularly good game where she killed a Smash Captain and then went on to kill 2 Vindicare assassins over the course of the rest of the game, because my opponent just didn't have the resources to deal with her because of what else was going on in the rest of the game. Next we'll be back for the Eversaw Assassin in a few days' time, so stay tuned for that, and consider subscribing to Auspex Tactics if you don't want to miss it. Feel free to support my Patreon page if you are enjoying these videos, as each tactics video like this does typically take longer than an hour to make from start to finish, and we've been making quite a lot of them recently, so any support is greatly appreciated. Thanks for listening. I'll hope to see you guys in the next episode.